Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for White Bear Area Chamber Special Membership Breakfast with Minnesota's Chief Executive, Governor Tim Walz. My name's Adam Hennon, and I am the 2019 Chair for the White Bear Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to the City of Maplewood for their generous hospitality and use of this wonderful facility at the Maplewood Community Center. Can we give them a round of applause? We have a lot of people to thank, so bear with me here. Special recognition and gratitude goes out to our two premier event sponsors who helped make this event possible, BNSF Railway and Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. A round of applause, please. I also want to thank our chamber sponsors, Loadmaster, Olson Thielen CPAs, Minnesota Commercial Railway, Comcast Business, Connexus Energy, Carlson Chiropractic, Hallberg Engineering, and JL Schwieters. Now, in an event like this, we wouldn't do it justice if we didn't give recognition to our elected officials who are in attendance today. Not in any particular order, but we have Kevin Donovan and Dr. Lucy Payne from the Matamidi School Board. Leonard, I'm going to butcher your last name, and I apologize in advance. Cassiopo, the City of Gem Lake City Council member. We have the Mayor of Maplewood, Mary Lee Abrams. The City of Maplewood Council member, Sylvia Neblett. Mayor of White Bear Lake, Joe Emerson. The Minnesota State Representative, Peter Fisher. Senator Chuck Weger. Minnesota State Representative, Amy Wozlowick. Minnesota State Representative, Jamie Becker-Finn. Ramsey County Commissioner, Victoria Reinhardt. And we'd also like to recognize the Metropolitan Council Chairwoman, Nora Slawick. Round of applause. If I missed anybody, and I see fingers being pointed at Bob Morse, and it's a good thing Bob Morse and I are good friends, and he'll forgive me relatively quickly, though I probably owe him lunch now. But if I did, please stand up, take some recognition. There you go, Bob. Here's your opportunity, right? Oh, and I missed another one, and another one. You guys slipped through the cracks on us. I apologize. So thank you to all. Before we continue, please note there are blank note cards on your tables. If you have a question for the governor, please write it on the note card. We'll be collecting them throughout the governor's address, and that hopefully we can get to all the questions. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Mary Lee Abrams, Mayor of Maplewood.
Good morning, everyone. As Mayor of Maplewood, I'm honored to welcome Governor Walz, our business leaders, and fellow elected and appointed officials this morning. Would all of the elected, I know we missed some, would all of the elected and appointed officials please stand in the room? And I'd like to thank our co-host, the White Bear Area Chamber of Commerce, for organizing today's event. Building and sustaining great Minnesota communities takes a holistic approach. It's not just about Maplewood, but how Maplewood fits into the broader Northeast Metro. Our partners at the Chamber play a big role in that. And ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, how is this region working to make the state stronger? That's why I appreciate Governor Walz's One Minnesota approach so much. We are one Minnesota. I see our partners from the school districts here. The students they educate, right, might stay in Maplewood, but they also might wind up in Mankato, in Morris, or even in Moose Lake. St. John's Hospital will likely hire doctors and nurses who grew up in rural towns in the Red River Valley. 3M might hire their engineers and marketers who come from the Iron Range, and our manufacturers could hire workers from Southeast Bluff Country. Like our vast network of lakes, rivers, and streams, Minnesotans are all connected and must work together to ensure the state's economic vitality, that it remains strong, and that there are opportunities for everyone from generation to generation. Building the next generation of leaders, parents, workers, and fellow community members and elected and appointed officials is something in which Governor Walz has a lot of personal experience. As a longtime educator, coach, and National Guard Command Sergeant Major, he knows you have to lead by example. In a time of bitter partisanship, the governor has successfully led by transcending the politics of the day. He's established Minnesota as a positive outlier, forging bipartisanship partnerships and working with leaders from both parties in his first term to deliver a budget that invests in education, health care, and community prosperity. His focus and approach to improving communities for everyone is another great example of why I'm proud to tell folks that I'm from Minnesota. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Governor Tim Walz. Thank
That
you.
was beautiful. Thank you for that. Oh, great. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I hope you feel the same way when I'm done speaking. So that's been, Mayor, thank you. That truly was a kind introduction, and I'm very appreciative of it because I think understanding that our role together in how we create an atmosphere that allows us to not just tackle problems, but to think about the future in an innovative way where everybody has a part in that is something that I think you model in this part of the state, and I think Minnesota does want to be the outlier, and it's unfortunate it has to be that way, an outlier in functioning government. You would like to think that's kind of the base level of where things go, but not necessarily true. It's a great morning to be with you. Twins turn a triple play, 5 home runs, and beat the Yankees. Now, it's so... There had to be somebody last night say, okay, I'm done, I can go in peace. So, but it's a great day. To all the elected officials who are here, as you see, there's quite a number in the room, and I think that's probably indicative because this part of the state creates quite a few leaders. And it's that collaborative approach to problem solving that runs the theme that runs through folks. I'm certainly grateful to be with you today. I should mention in here, to all of the HR people, after the week I had last week, I share your pain. So that's it. So HR professionals, I'm with you. But this session, and I do think, again, being somewhat reflective, and again, the bar's a little low. I oftentimes talk about this, that it's a very Minnesota humbleness, whether it's that Minnesota Lutheranism or what it is. We have a tendency to believe that if you do something good and talk about it, it doesn't count. And we, I think, sell ourselves short by somewhat times celebrating in what we do. Again, not a pat on the back for doing what you're supposed to do, but an understanding in a somewhat challenging political environment at a time when it's going to take leaders to rise above that. These legislators that were here, the mayors and the city councils who were part of that, and all of the folks who brought ideas to the state legislature where it's supposed to be a healthy debate, where there are going to be certain ideological differences, but where the goals ought to be very clear. I don't think you could find much disagreement that Minnesota needs to have the best educated and best trained workforce in the nation. We absolutely must do that. That is good for business, that is good for people's opportunities personally, that is good for the growth of our communities. That is especially true when we are always working for having enough workforce there. Again, a couple weeks ago, we were noted as being one of the top 3 states in the nation to live. And I sometimes say, we can always do better, but Hawaii is going to be a tough one to beat. And so they have some built-in advantages. But Minnesota, and it's by design, and it's by the people in this room that made smart decisions, that make our communities places people want to live. That old saying is people may not move here for our values, but they stay for it. That's true, but we have to also start getting them to move here for our values. We have to start reaching out, that shortage of workforce. And that is a complex thing. And I know this group knows it's all too easy in this political environment to try and find the simple answers, to try and put people into camps that are easy identifiable. You usually start with the black hat and the white hat. You know, not only are they wrong, they somehow are evil or trying to go the wrong way. Or an oversimplification oversimplification of trying to create a healthy business ecosystem and environment. That's a complex thing. That includes a well-trained workforce. That includes the ability to have a modern transportation system. It includes tax policy. It includes regulatory policy. It's not owned by one side of the political spectrum to be able to just say that, or to pull out a chunk of a piece and say the reason that people aren't coming here is taxes are too high. It could be part of the reasons, but it's not the only one. And when we focus on those things, or the reason we're not succeeding is because we're leaving a group of folks behind. And I say this as a proud public school teacher. Our public schools are some of the best, if not the best, in the nation. They're especially good. I'm proud of that. And I don't think it hurts to say that, but I could almost add an addendum onto that. Our public schools are the best in the nation if you're a white kid, and that's fact. If you're a child of color, you're not going to get it. And that is a complex issue. That is not a condemnation of the school system. It's not a condemnation of the communities. It's complex factors that have led to gaps that are not just gaps for those communities of color. They will come back to harm the economy and the social well-being of every one of our communities. If those employers, those of you who are out there, 70% of your workforce in this state over the next 25 years are going to come from communities of color. We darn sure better make sure they're getting what they need. They're not falling behind, and we're making sure that our communities, as I look up here, inclusiveness and diversity are not just nice things to say to make ourselves feel better. They're the ethically right thing to do, and that is economic strength in doing it that way. That's how we build resilient communities. That's how we build the growth that we want. And I say that we're not building growth for the sake of growth. We're building it because it does several things. One of the great freedoms that we have in this country, and I say in this state, is to choose where we want to live. But to be able to choose where you want to raise your family, there needs to be an employer there that's going to be healthy and vibrant and can pay a wage that you can take that wage and invest in that home. And that home is the place where your family is safe and your hopes and dreams can come true, and those kids can come home to do homework. Because when we started doing a budget this year, thinking about education, you can't just do the education budget. I'm proud. We made big investments in education. But if we don't recognize that it's across this state, but in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, 17% of our students don't have stable homes. They're homeless at any given time. You come to school, and I know it says a geography teacher, if you slept in a car the night before in a Minnesota winter, you're not very interested in what the heck the geography of South America is. You have other issues. Those of us with Maslow's hierarchy know you got to fulfill those basic needs. And so when we did the budget and we talked to your legislators, we talked about this. Housing had to be foundational. Homework starts with a home. So we built the housing budget in conjunction with that. And it's something we're looking at. And I don't know the reason for this. Someone asked me, what about these agencies? Are they too big? When you take this job as governor, you get elected, you think you know what it is, and then the next morning you realize you have no damn idea what this job is. And I theoretically thought I did, but you didn't. And then you have to start looking at it. And I think all of you in your businesses are always reevaluating for changes. I asked the question why I was running for governor after I was elected, and I asked it today. Why do we have 24 state agencies? Does that make sense? Is that the right thing? Is that the most efficient? Are they most responsive to you? And are we communicating with one another so that if we're focusing on this and we believe this, that Minnesota's future lies in our families and our children and supporting them, are we delivering those services in the best possible way? So when your legislators came and debated these things, the first thing out of the chute was that biennium budget, and we had to get that done. And I'm very proud that Minnesota was able to get a balanced budget, invest in education, invest in health care for Minnesota citizens to make sure we remain the healthiest state and the one that insures more of its people. Those are not luck things. Those are by design that we were able to do that. A program that was put in place 27 years ago in the Healthcare Access Fund was up for renewal this year, and legislators came together and renewed that. That's smart investments. That makes a difference. But what we have to understand is that session happened, it got over. Now we need to look at what does the future look like? How do we move to that clean energy economy and bridge the way there? Because I think everyone, given the choice, they would love to go to totally clean energy. It makes sense. It's generated here at home. It reduces carbon emissions. They also know, though, that the lights have to be dependable and stay on, and they don't want to open their bill and not be able to pay for it. But we're reaching a point in Minnesota with some smart strategies. We can do both. And what I would argue that this legislative session about setting the groundwork, being the only divided legislature in the nation, proved that there are compromises to be found, proved that there can be dignity and respectfulness in the debate, proved that we could get done. That one-day special session, that is overtime. I'm a football coach. That's the same game. We didn't go extra, so we finished on time in my book, because it took one extra day to get it done. That in itself was pretty amazing. We have a $2 billion surplus. We have a AAA rating. So those were things that made sense. Oh, and I was talking about that you get built into these camps. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but if some of you had to be asked before this session would the first income tax come under a DFL governor for the first time in 20 years, you think that was going to happen? The answer would have been no. It's the counterintuitive coalitions that we're building that are investing, or a Republican Senate that would vote to keep the provider tax in place to make sure that our health care and our social services are going. Folks compromised for the good of Minnesota. We found that. Now, with that being said, and the questions that I know you're going to get is, someone said, are you happy with the session? I said, I'm pleased with how the session ended, but I'm not satisfied. Leaving transportation unaddressed in any meaningful manner is simply, you can't make kicking the proverbial can down the pothole road is about what that amounted to. And I get it, that there were folks that they said had an aversion. I simply, and again, I hope you know, it wasn't for the lack of trying, that I think it was pretty clear after millions of dollars in ad. My pro tip of the day for you is, if you're going to run for office, you might not want to run on raising taxes on things right away. But I felt like, and I did it specifically because I think it's disingenuous to tell people they're going to get things for free without telling them how they're going to get it. And so to have a world-class system, Minnesota has the 5th highest amount of road miles of any state. We are on par with Texas and California and Pennsylvania. We connected the state together, and guess what? We have a higher standard of living, we have higher incomes, we have safer roads. All of those things connect together. So at some point in time, the folks who came before us decided this was going to be a connected modern state, and they invested. And every previous generation spent more of their take-home money on our roads than us. So I made the argument this year, we can't be selfish and not say we're going forward. Now, if you go ask somebody, gee, imagine this, they poll them. Would you like your gas taxes to go up? Hell no, that's the answer that people say. But the next question is, do you want to be caught in traffic? Do you want to pay more for this? Do you think the money should come from your schools or local government aid? Where should it come from? There's always this debate. Are we paying enough and getting what we're paying for back? And if the answer is no, then that's what we need to fix. The answer was no very early in this term, and I want to thank the legislators who are here. We tried to modernize our licensing system in MNLARS, and that damn thing didn't work. And at some point, those of you in business, you've read all the books, you've gone to all the seminars. That old mantra for the last decade or so is fail fast. Hell, in government, we fail so slowly, we just slowly die. And because we're risk averse. Because we will take a beating if we get something wrong. You know, we always talk about the technology in this. Gee, when I was stuck at the Target checkouts, when their technology went down, nobody was calling for everybody to be fired. They were saying, fix the damn thing. And I think in government, we need to be responsive to that when we have a failure or when something doesn't work, let's move differently. And I have to say, this is the group to do it before, and I'll take some questions. The sense of service that Minnesotans had, when I asked to put together a team of experts to help us come in and evaluate the MNLARS situation, Minnesotans across the state raised their hand. Folks that could bill at $1,000 an hour are volunteering 30 hours a week for free, paying for their own meals and own transportation to help the state move in a direction that works. People were willing to say, the old adage, ask not what Minnesota can do for you, ask what you can do for Minnesota. Our administration, these legislators, these mayors, we view this working together and bringing people in to make sure that we are delivering on those services, to make sure those dedicated public employees, of which they are, have a direction and have the capacity in leadership to say, you know what, we need to switch course. We need to look a different way. So this week when I got asked, is Health and Human Services too big to manage? Are there things that need to be? Yeah, I think so. And I think we need to take a look at it. Why did we didn't create these agencies for the sake of being those agencies. We created them to deliver services that improve people's lives and give folks the opportunity. And as business owners who are in this room, or as educators in this room, or as homeowners are in this room, if our community and those least fortunate amongst us are doing well, we're all doing better. And so that mantra that you heard me talk about, and I appreciate it, Mayor, of talking about One Minnesota, wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a true belief that I believed sets Minnesota apart. And I've had the privilege to live in other places. And I often tell people this, you don't get to choose where you're born, but you get to choose where you raise your families. And this is a state, when you look around, I think sometimes when things are too close to your face, you don't realize what you have. I'm telling you, by every measure, we have the capacity to provide the best quality of life, the safest quality of life, the best schools, and the best business climate to allow people to achieve their dreams for everyone of any place in the nation. And I think now more than ever, we're going to have to lead, because again, I was with Angie Craig yesterday at a groundbreaking out at Renewal by Anderson's. They're expanding, creating new jobs out there, and the Congresswoman was talking about her optimism, and I said, well, of course you're optimistic. You serve in Congress, for God's sakes. You have to be or you'll die. But here, we get to change that. Here, we get to set that tone. And so I'm grateful to be with you. I congratulate each and every one of you for the vibrancy, the tone that comes out of this part of the state, and the willingness to bring that to the state capitol. This is an area that speaks loudly and speaks with credibility at the state capitol. Your legislators are well known for being bipartisan problem solvers who stand up to the hardest issues. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. So thank you for having me, and Senator Uyghur will take and answer all your questions. So that's it. So. Yeah, well, I'm going to clap on this. First of all, the question was framed very well. It's multimodal. We're all in it together. We have got to quit what people were doing, is somehow pitting one area of the state against another. That if we're investing in transit in the metro area, that somehow is pulling resources from Worthington. Simply not true. Not true in how we fund this, because the trunk highway system and our highways are predominantly funded by the gas tax. And as I told you, the federal gas tax has not moved since 1993. According to inflation, it has lost 40% of its punch. The state of Minnesota ranks below in the national average. And for us to be below and our population being less, we have more roads than Ohio, about half the people that Ohio has. And the Republican governor of Ohio was successful in getting a gas tax because he said it's the only way to fix the roads. So the situation we've got in, this has become politically charged. Now, if you're going to take money from the sales tax of auto parts, which was a proposal, and I agreed in compromise this year, we did that. That transferred about $451 million from the general fund, which means it's not going to LGA, it's not going to other things. And you can say, good, there's too much in the general fund. Fine. Even if I agree with you on that, I would tell you this. You have transferred enough money to build the Blotnick Bridge up in Duluth with $0 for the rest of the state. Zero. So there is not a long-range plan. When somebody asks you, yeah, but 20 cents was too much. I've always, like many of you taught, you assess the plan, you assess courses of action, you decide which course of action gets you to that goal. It's $18.7 billion is what we're short in just transportation funding, especially dealing with the gas tax. That doesn't take into consideration what we're going to need to do on transit. I have suggested, and this is a pretty radical notion, transit in the metro area is paid by people in the metro area, even though the rest of the state benefits from this. We've got a way to reunite the state, and I'm asking people, I asked Republicans to come back because I told them this. I said, okay, you're going to go out for 24 hours and say, we defeated the governor's gas tax. And then the next day, you're going to say, oh, we stopped the governor from building roads. We stopped the governor from building traffic. And I said on the third day, everybody in Minnesota is going to blame you for every pothole that's out there. And what do you got for me to come back? So I would ask all of you, let's come back, analyze what it's going to cost. Let's find a way to do this. And all 50 states, states like Ohio, the reason that Mike DeWine went back to a gas tax was Ohio said they thought they could build roads by bonding and by tolling, and it ruined their budget. It totally ruined their budget. So I would argue this. We need to come back together. We need to cut and build a coalition. And again, I just want to tell you, if you don't think there was compromise involved, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. When I got down to 1 penny, I'm like, damn it, just do a penny for the heck of it. What does it do? No. And the reason was because it was ideologically poisoned Even though when you tell Minnesotans, they are willing to invest if they believe the money's going to what it's supposed to. There is nothing more dedicated in our Constitution than dollars going directly from a fuel tax to roads. That frees up the capacity. And in this area, and I know that the chair of Met Council knows this, the transit and being able to build out bus rapid transit and connecting this area. You are fast growing. We don't have time. We need to respond quickly to move people. And this is an issue now of equity where we are leaving communities behind because they want to work, they're ready to work, but we can't move them in a way to get there, and it's leaving them behind. And so my commitment to you is, it was the biggest part of the unfinished business this year. It has the most belief together that we can get this, and I am more than willing. You propose it, I'm willing to look at it, but we have to be realistic. Future generations are counting on us to do our fair share. If we would have upped that gas tax 11 cents, that put us on the par with what every previous generation has invested. We're not paying our fair share right now, even though, yeah, people say, yeah, but gas is $2.65. The thing that government forgets about is inflation is real. So, yeah, absolutely. And I'll take the second one first. Bemidji does this too, career academies. We're getting much smarter about this, what it's going to take to prepare that workforce. I say this as a teacher, and I used to have these philosophical debates with my fellow teachers where they would say, well, we're not here to provide cogs to the machine. Yeah, kind of we are. But I said, I always thought of it as a three-pronged stool. I saw my job as a teacher to provide the best opportunity for that individual student to achieve the dream they want to. Secondly, I believe that Thomas Jefferson was right. A well-educated population is the only way that a democracy will work. So you're providing citizens into that. The third piece of that is I do believe that providing the skill sets for the economy is critically important. And I say that somewhat selfishly. The first two are kind of altruistic. The last one's kind of selfish. I always told my students this: I want you to go out, get a really good job, pay your taxes so I can retire and collect Social Security. That's how it works. And you don't have to come to my garage and steal my lawnmower, that you put people in that. Yes, we have to do this, but here's what I would tell all of you. It starts with parents. This belief of the nobleness of the trades, the nobleness of doing something. I've got a 12-year-old, and if he comes home and tells me he wants to be an electrician or a carpenter, it'll be the happiest day of my life for several reasons. He will find his true passion. I know he will have a skill that he can make good money and a good living, and it will be something that is needed and being able to be delivered. Then trying to ram this, I say this as a public school teacher where we treated Mankato West as everybody was college preparatory. We need that. If your dream is to be doctor, lawyer, accountant, whatever you need, and that needs an advanced degree, then we need to make sure that that's able to be provided. But even at Mankato West, what we know is only 31% of them are going to get bachelor's degrees or higher. So why are we not focusing on the things that will give them the skill sets to get where they need to go, to start their own business, to do whatever it is? I think there's an exciting time right now, and I don't diminish this because formalized education is critically important. Getting those degrees that are pathways to that are important, but we as parents and we as the state need to be investing in that. We work hand in hand with our businesses, work with our trades, work with our schools, and think about our curriculum. So when I hear of these pathways programs, they're working. They're working. They're exciting. I was up in Bemidji where a young woman was working on audio-visual tech or whatever. She was a junior going to be a senior this coming year or whatever. She was already hired and working 20 hours a week with the local television and production studios, and she had a guaranteed job on completion of her high school degree because she would have had enough because of that program. It was basically the equivalent of an associate's degree. That's smart. It saves us money, and here's the thing. I say that about my son too, is how great would it be for him to get that skill, be an apprenticeship program, have that nobleness of the trade, and not one penny of student loan debt. Those are the things that make a difference. So this administration's committed to it. I say it both as a teacher, as a parent, and as someone who's seen what we need in this. We have got to provide you the workforce. I go into so many businesses, they said, I'd love to expand. I don't have the workers. I don't have the workers. Yeah, I'll do the transparent part on the end. Trust me on this. I come from that I would love to do as much as we can. I know some of the critiques at the end was, and not quite accurately portrayed, that all these decisions were made behind closed doors by three people. And not necessarily the case, but any organization, somebody has to be responsible and make the final decision, especially in a representative democracy. But I have to tell you, we're in a situation now where no one can compromise in public. It's seen as a weakness. And when you have a complex deal, what if someone says, okay, I will compromise with you on the provider tax, but you've got to compromise on this tax bill. You've got to do this. If any of those leaked at some given point, there are constituency groups that said, the governor sold us out. He compromised way too early, he sold us out, and that blows everything apart. So I think that piece of it is going to be critically important. I do say this, I think we set a good tone. It was a budget year. We had to clean up a lot of stuff, the opioid legislation. We did tax conformity. Tax conformity, the last state to get it done because they didn't get it done last year. We did that, and I think in a very healthy business climate, we're able to get that done. Here's what I will tell you. 2020 is going to be a challenge because all the things that got kicked down the road and the tough ones, policy issues. Now, we have a bonding bill that I'm going to encourage us. Just makes sense. You invest in capital investments. If you own a home and you need to fix the roof, you're not doing yourself any fiscally conservative favor by letting your roof fall in, especially if you can get the interest rates at a cheaper rate and you have the capacity to pay it back. So we should be bonding. We should have done it this year, but we can catch that up. Here's the real challenge. There's some sticky issues that we're going to have to address, like climate change, like gun violence. Those are types of things that tend to divide us. They're going to have to be addressed, and they are coming back this legislative session. But here's what I will tell you. The leaders that are in this room and the leadership that's set there in Speaker Melissa Hortman in the House and Paul Gazelka in the Senate, the relationship that we built was based on trust, it was based on decency, it was based on listening to one another and an understanding that the three of us would sink or swim together and that the state would sink or swim. That came out. I mean, when's the last time you saw the three legislative leaders on the day that the budget was due stand up there and all say, this is pretty good, I'm proud of what we did? Because trust me, when I stand with the Republican leader of the Senate and praise him, I'm also getting phone calls that afternoon from Democrats saying, why are you giving him credit for this? You're lifting them up or whatever. My job and their job as legislators and your job in this room is not to figure out how do we win or lose short-term political battles, but how do we get long-term solutions. So I think we set the tone. I am, again, not naive. I tell people this. I supervised the high school lunchroom for 20 years. I'm not naive. But I am optimistic. The legislators that are there, the tone of Minnesota that's there, I think the interconnectedness, especially with the business community and communities in general, is as strong as I've ever seen it. And I think the positive note of dysfunction in D.C. is we know where that road leads. We want to take a different path. And so I'm glad to be here with you. I'm hopeful, and I want to thank all of you for being concerned. So thank you all.